Welcome to the Starting Over podcast because wins don't last forever. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and we have an interesting guest today. We have Neo Shazam from HC Realms. So just go ahead and say hi for the nice people.
Hello, I'm Neo Shazam.
All right. You don't have to give your real name out. We don't force people down like that. That's fair. Anyway, pretty much today what we're going to be talking about is some of the backgrounds of Neo Shazam, how he got into the game, and not only that, just some of his outlook on the meta. And I'm going to have a surprise question for him later on in the show. So I hope you really enjoy. So, Neo Shazam, how did you get into the game of HeroClix?
Well, my roommates actually got me into the Versus card game, and then when that game started to decline in popularity, I had to find something to get my comics fixed. So I turned to HeroClix and was able to pick up a bunch of those from my friends for very cheap, and went to the local Orlando tournament scene and just started to learn from there.
Okay. And so you came in from Versus. I know a couple of people that I once played with played Versus. So what was, just real briefly, I know it's going to be off topic of HeroClix, what was your favorite deck in Versus?
I actually liked Team Superman, just because I thought it was neat trying to have one person beat all the other teams that had different diversity of characters. And they actually kind of made him a little bit weak at the beginning, so it was a real challenge.
Okay. So about how many years have you been seriously playing Clix?
Since 2004, so that would be about 7-8 years.
Okay, cool. I know, like, for me, I think I came in around that same time. When I look back, it's like, wow, I've been playing for a long time. But I remember my first set of Mutant and Mayhem, and how I thought that if I kept buying more stuff, that eventually I could win. and the things that you learn when everyone has Ultimates Thor and Ultimates Iron Man and Energy Explosion can be enhanced by enhancement, and all the other fun things coming in. So with that, when we look at your average play style that you try to do, what do you shoot for? Do you shoot for comic accurate teams? Do you shoot for like min-max? Do you shoot for a hybrid? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you start building teams?
Usually it's sort of a hybrid. I'll take pretty much my favorite character and then try to make them as effective as possible. I play the GSA a lot, and in Golden Age they can be very, very comic accurate and brutal at the same time. So that's usually what I shoot for. So I'm one of those people that do get a little upset when someone like Hawkgirl doesn't get a keyword that would be like JSA or JLA, where I could easily insert her on a team that's more accurate.
Yeah, she's the one from the Brightest Day, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, she is awesome, and I was looking at her for a team of mine recently. She not only just kills flyers, she kills so many other things just straight up with all her awesomeness. It's beautiful for what she can do for her 71 points. I don't even think they did really well with the point formula on her. I think she's at least like 90 points, but I'll take it for 71. So you like playing sort of like the optimized comic accurate teams. It's like I want to do this lineup, but I know I need these figures. So that's sort of where you're going.
Yeah, pretty much. If it was in Golden Age play, it would be if I was going to build a Big 7 team, I'd go for like Man of Steel over like the Brave and the Bold Superman. If representatives, that's good for me.
Okay, because I know like there's some people out there they more look at for me to have this complete comic accurate team that it's separate from being effective, and
Right.
I think that's like the big misnomer that really happens out there, that people think that if I play a comic accurate theme team, then I'm pretty much giving up on the tournament, when in actuality you have to look at your comic accurate theme team and say, hey, what pieces do I have that's really good, and then what's missing out of this team that I need to compensate for in other ways. Just like I know there's very, very, very few keywords that have support telekinesis, outwit, perplex, improv in that one format, and there's even fewer teams that actually have good TK in their lineups. So considering that you mainly play like JSA and was it probably like a JLA team, you usually play what, like higher point games or 300-point games, or what's the average scale that your venue plays at?
Usually about 450, 500 is a pretty good value where you can actually dip into the characters that aren't all min-max and start going to those second and maybe even third tier characters and have some fun with them.
Oh, okay. So like with doing that, I know with that 400 to 500 point range, it gets real interesting because you break that sphere in which your tent pole or your 200 something point attacker is not just floating everything and then there's some piddly guy in the back. You actually have enough to say like, okay, I can put in maybe a couple of 115, 120 point people and get some good backup, or really go 200 something point guy and then put in a good support crew, stuff like that. Do you find it better to have like maybe like two major attackers and everybody else sort of backs them up with a bunch of little attacks, or is it better just to try to do as best you can to equally distribute the points so that everyone can be effective? Or let me rephrase, not everyone be effective, but everyone sort of contributes a little bit more aggressively.
Usually it's a lot of attackers usually try to have a guy that's a tie-up piece, a dedicated tie-up piece. More than often, I'll let the opponent get the first hit, but I'll dictate who they're going to hit. And actually, more than not, that's more important.
See that. Sorry, go ahead.
Like for example, a few weeks ago, I was playing a JSA team against the Ultimates, and we're playing on the museum, the Brightest Day, the museum map, and the only person that left in view was Wildcat, and Thor comes out, hammers Wildcat for his 5. Captain America comes up, charges him, hits him for 3, sets him right on to that. I think it was the next to last. If you remember Wildcat, the rookie, on his last click and his next to last click, he has flurry, willpower, 3 damage, 10 attack. And that's exactly what he put him on, and he couldn't get any more attacks on him. So my team just was like, okay, we'll leave him here. 1, 2, 3, knockout cap, and just proceed to roll, because there's older dials. If people aren't used to them, you've got regen, and then you have, of course, the GSA chaining 18 or 19 around.
Yeah, and see, for people that came in around Avengers, if you're listening, and I know a lot of folks hate a lot of the old school stuff, mainly because really there's a couple of eras and clicks that you have to sort of keep in mind. Everything up till Seth, which is, you could say, to Armor Wars, everything was front loaded, except maybe a Hulk here or there. Everything was front loaded, but you would have a figure that's like 30 points that has 9 clicks of health. Things that don't make sense. And so when you deal with some of those older figures, you have ridiculous amount of health for the points or the stats are just out of whack, and that's why you get things like Scourge or U-Man or Hive Trooper, things that don't make sense statistically of why these figures have these powers. Okay, at the same end, the higher point figures, they either were really broke or really ineffective. When you get to Seth introduces us to the U concept, or I like to call it the wave concept, in which you have highs and lows in your dial, and that if you get hit, you're not necessarily screwed. You can still try to put up a good fight, in dial, mid dial, or late dial. When you start getting the special powers, everything just goes out the window from that point on. Origin was like at the end, there was a set right before Avengers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that set introduced a lot of good characters. Yes, you don't have Indomitable. It wasn't invented yet. You don't have Sharpshooter. You don't have special powers. You don't have any of that. But out of Origin, there were a ton of really, really good meta-defining pieces. Wildcat was one. The other for me, was Rookie Question, Black Hawks. I still use that Origin Superman. Definitely now I bring them out a little bit more for the Superman little key. Sorry, not the Superman keyword. That Superman ability when he dies, then like Eradicator and Superboy gets super pumped up, and Steel. So look at some of those older dials, and I know people don't like going back too far for some of their metas because they play only Modern Age or whatever else. But look at some of those older figures, and you'll find some really good gems there. And if you go on eBay or Price Watch or wherever you buy your stuff, or your local store, you'll find them for like maybe $0.25 a piece, and they're worth the investment. But with that being said, with older pieces, and in spite of JSA, what's one of your older pieces that you've played that you just said, like, man, if I can like remake that into the modern age, I would be so happy?
One of my favorites was actually the Origins unique Sandman. He's the guy that looks like he has a Donald Duck mask and the fedora.
Yeah.
But that guy, even around our area at that time, he was just he was like bulletproof. He was way more than the 59 points for that willpower, prob, and in-cap. He was just if you didn't finish him off early, his dial was just deceptively deep, and he was going to be there at the end of the game just annoying you.
Yeah, and that one in particular, I had to trade so much stuff to get him, and people may or may not realize, like, his first click, he starts with stealth, 7 movement, 6 range, just JSA team ability. He has smoke cloud, he has willpower, and he has prob, and he goes for 7 clicks for 59 points. And this is where it gets really, like I said, the older figures get deceptive, because some people may not have noticed this, but the average click is 5 clicks, 5 to 6 clicks now. You don't have that many hero clicks that are 7, 8, 9 clicks deep, and you really don't have that many that are that deep that are sub 100. So like Sandman in a Golden Age game now, people would not know how many clicks are left in him, and even when you knock him past prob, he goes in that close combat expert beautifulness. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I've got he was the last figure out of my case that I bought, and I was getting kind of nervous that I hadn't pulled him by then, and thankfully he was in the last little pack, and I was able to breathe easy.
Yeah, and one figure that I know for me that defined my meta from Origin was Johnny Quick. And people are going to say, Johnny Quick, the guy that, came out recently. No, it's old school CSA, the team ability that WizKid / Nika forgot, Johnny Quick, and how that figure for a long time was like the figure to have. The hypersonic speed, the charge, the the middle dial that you may or may not hit that dead square depending on how your opponent hits you or not. He was just awesome all the way around.
And actually, remembering one thing is that in my competitive and team play, I do probably 95% of the time I will have a probability control character. Just because there's been times I guess early on I got playing and I had that one roll that just messed you over, and so I've always pretty much, like you said, 95% of the time I'll almost have to have a probability control piece just so at least my first attack hits, I guess.
All right. When you're talking about probability controls, it's interesting. Mainly with prob, some people, there's various opinions on prob. Some people are like, I can't roll worth anything, so I have prob. Some folks are like, I have multiple prob figures on my team. And some people feel that multiple uses of prob is abusive and breaks the game mechanic. What's your view on prob outside of like, I just needed just to, cover my bases?
Yeah, I can definitely see where it gets abusive, like the winning team 2 years ago where they had 1, 2, 3, 4 guys plus the theme one, so you're rolling 5 or 6 times just to see if the single first hit lands. Somebody brought up that it's a good idea where you can only have the dice re-rolled twice or even once. I think that'd be pretty good to stop abuse. Then again, by the characters that they're currently given it to in modern age, you don't see it. First, you don't see it that often, and then most of the pieces are costing a lot more points, except for Roulette, who's 35. But her Hellion keyword isn't going to really be too big of a deal. So they're starting to curve that back, and the outwit as well seems to be disappearing from the top click in modern age, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, and for me, I know recently I had some problems with putting in prob on my team. Namely, when you try to make keywords and keyword-based teams, and then you sort of say like who has prob at an affordable point, and then you start looking at sub 100 point prob, and you start realizing like I'm almost better having it on first click on a major attacker than I am on a little tiny support piece, and that's one thing that's really frustrating when I was looking at that. The other thing that came to me was when we are looking at the sort of the evolution of the game that was starting to be really coming to its own of the death of the pit crew. We didn't have cheap support since Dr. Midnight for 24 points, and before that it was the paramedic. So we had the death of that. We had all your support you had to pay a good amount of points for. Your perplex you were paying 30-40 points for. Then you had your probability control, which you were paying almost 50 for. And so we had all that, and it made it so that if you were going to have the pit crew, you couldn't fit it all in a 300-point team. And now you can fit a full pit crew on a 300-point team. And you can get your support TK outwit. You can get all of that in the 300-point team. How do you feel about the reemergence of the pit crew, or you're sort of like, yeah, it's just how things go?
For definitely for the nurse, I thought that was unnecessary, and sometimes looking at the game, I guess there's people that have been playing from a completely different time period as me, and they kind of want the same things, because obviously I heard back in the day that Nightcrawler was just out of control. The Clobber in Time one.
Oh yeah.
He would get perplexed up to a zillion and come and smash people, and now we have another powerful Nightcrawler. And then we used to have cheap nurses, and now, once again, with Web of Spider-Man, we have chief nurses. For me, I came in pretty much during the Fantastic Forces Icons. I came in just a little bit before Icon, and I personally like the whole healing support mechanic. I'm not that type of player at all. I would use more things like nanobots. I would use regen. Basically, very aggressive. If I can heal on my way, I'll do it. Other than that, if the piece is too damaged, he's gonna be KO'd. He's gonna try to do as much damage as he can before he goes out. But for the most part, I'm not going to be trying to heal. Maybe if it's a rookie Raven or somebody that happens to be thematic healer. I didn't really play Dr. Midnight, but Raven during Icons, I would play her. But yeah, I don't understand the nurse is very unnecessary to me. It's not somebody that I think is going to promote the game. If you're in a comic book store and people are walking by, I don't think they're going to be like, oh, hey, who's that generic nurse figure? I got to buy a pack to get her, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the people that should be promoted are more the people that actually sell comics. Though the only generic I can kind of get behind is like the World War II. That's kind of a neat, like you said, the Black Hawks, the Howling Commandos. I think that has a bit of a more combat built-in draw for comics and a superhero medium than a nurse, which just really didn't push anything forward, and it was kind of like, well, we gotta fill some slots. So here's your nurse, here's your 35-point roulette, cheap prop, and then in that vein, like a Scarlet Witch, I'd like to see is like the No More Mutants, something completely for dial design. I'd like to see like the team up version of the character and then their own comic version, so that we get some good differentiation between versions. And I'm sure the fans of Scarlet Witch could attest that she's more than a 35-point flying barrier version, you know.
Yeah, and we have you bring up an interesting storyline about the whole No More Mutants element and how technically Scarlet Witch just said this power no longer exists, you know, in the universe in mass, and how we don't really have a figure that does that. And I sort of said to myself, if I ever was able to go to Gen Con and if I was ever able to win Worlds, the figure that I would make would be Dr. Voodoo when he's Sorcerer Supreme. And one of his powers would be, and I don't care how much it would cost, is like name a standard power. No one can use this standard power for the rest of this game. Or name an attacks, or name a slot on the dial. No one can use powers from this part of the dial for the rest of this game. And then like he would have like self-doubt. You know, like he would have a power on each click, and it's like if Dr. Voodoo is negating himself, lower his stats by 1, and you get to pick. So, you know, if you're not negating anything, you have a full powered up Dr. Voodoo. If you are negating something, you're not as powerful. But that just came into my mind about that. But I really do think, like, if we had something that was unique like that Scarlet Witch that just said no more something, I think it would really dictate the meta. Speaking about dictating the meta, the new hotness that's going around is the Infinity Gauntlet and all the thoughts and craziness that's surrounding it. So what's your thought on the Infinity Gauntlet? I sort of jumped Joel Dad with it when it just came out. It's been out for a little bit. You had time to look at it. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and I'm really thinking about Lobo with it and Eradicator with it. It seems like those two pieces for fully loaded would be pretty sweet. If I was only going to do part of it, I would probably take the prob, and depending on what the character has, maybe maybe Super Senses.
That's an interesting assessment.
I actually think the Gamma Bomb will actually be more prevalent though. Just because for me, being able to stick as a very aggressive player, being able to stick that 5 out from his from the opponent's starting area and being like, well, the only safe place is going to be on my side of the map, and helping to frustrate or give a little feedback damage to Professor X is very appealing.
Yeah, and I've had to deal with a couple Professor X's. I've fortunately where I play at, I've only had to deal with the Nightcrawler once that wasn't on a thematic team. But the issue comes in with the Gamma Bomb, in my opinion, is when it first came out, I thought that it was like the best thing since sliced bread, and that it was going to mess up Professor X teams. It messes up so much of the cheap support figures, it's not funny. And if you combine it with Thunderbolt Ross, you get something ridiculously sick. When the Gauntlet came out, I was thinking, man, full power Gauntlet, this is where it's at, and you're going to put it on the biggest guy possible. But some tech I've been throwing around with various people was putting the Gauntlet on like a mid-tier guy, and then he comes to be like a top-tier guy instead of trying to propel a top-tier guy to godhood, and making it effective. There's also something else that I found out when I did like a couple play tests, because I do have a Gauntlet in hand, no gems, but I do have a Gauntlet. And the funny thing I found out was to get your +1 stat, on average, is going to take you 7 turns. 7, that includes your rest, the turn that figure isn't doing anything. It's going to take you, on average, about 7 turns to get to a +1. And once you get to a +1, there's like a sweet spot on the dial that if you land on it, you can roll the dice, and the chance of you getting a +2 is there. But really, once you try to get that +2 stat, you're getting greedy. You have to stick with that guaranteed +1, just because the rolls really aren't in your favor. the stats aren't really in your favor of getting that +2 to all your stats. And I think a lot of people are looking at that for the Gauntlet, and it's really not guaranteed.
Yeah, what's very interesting is, as Joel had mentioned, and as you mentioned last time, how he was talking how big the shield disruptor is, and really both the Gamma Bomb and the Gauntlet are basically tentpole helpers, whereas the meta before with the shield disruptor and meteorite.
Yeah.
Other things like that made it a lot harder to choose a tentpole that's when its damage reducers might not be there from an object, let alone people that can outwit or just punch through it with Psychic Blast or Exploit Weakness.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. I know a lot of people at my venue sort of complain when it becomes Golden Age that whenever we have a Golden Age game, I hardly bring anyone with damage reduction, and I always pack Shield Disruptor and TK or somebody that can carry it around or something along those lines, because Shield Disruptor did negate the full value of a tentpole. Because you didn't even, it wasn't like the Meteorite where it was like a one-time use and you had to get the damage off. I mean the attack off. It's just like, I just place it here, now I get rid of your Impervious, and I don't even need to pack Outwit. And I don't even pay for it. And so I think for us to pay for things that makes our figures better and a little bit more customizable is nice. And I know it's almost feels loaded, but do you feel that we may have been better off if we just stuck with feats?
Yeah. I think the feats would have to be targeted better. Either through keywords or limiting who it could be on, because people getting upset at feats, basically when they get upset is because when you take the they're not trying to go to those second tier or third tier and try maybe like Inspiring Command or something like that. It's usually like, oh hey, I have Nightcrawler, he's a world beater. I have Professor X, he's a world beater. Oh, now I have Nightcrawler with Protected, and I have Professor X with Mental Shield. So I'll have the Uber figure, and I'll make them even better instead of having the chance to do like Inspiring Command on Ultimate Cap or whatnot, or Haymaker on Hawkman and stuff like that. So I think that's why people got a little upset with Feats last time. But if you make Feats Highlander, or you like they had the 10% rule, you can find a nice happy medium to where people aren't just like, oh well, I'm going to take the super good and I'm going to give them even more. They might be like, oh, this second tier guy with something is now first tier, and that's excellent diversity that should kind of be strived for to make the environment better.
Yeah, and for those people who don't know about Inspiring Command, Inspiring Command came out in Collateral Damage, and I'm just going to read it. And it says prerequisites: leadership or mastermind. Choose a character. Characters with the same team symbol as the character and a lower point value than the character are not dealt pushing damage, and when a second token is placed upon them if they are adjacent to the character at the beginning or end of an action. Pretty much what it was doing is, this is the beta for Warbound. Really, if we think about it, not only that, this feat made it so that leadership was not worthless, and that it was worth looking for a high point figure with leadership, or a figure with leadership throughout the dial, versus just leadership at the beginning for one click. I know I made a ton of great teams. I made a whole bunch of Shield teams with Samuel Jackson, Nick Fury, with all my nice Shield agents just attacking every turn because they're next to Nick Fury, who has leadership and Inspiring Command, and that's one, if you really want a good time playing with a bunch of like minions, or playing with a team that's really large but has like one big leader and then like a bunch of tiny little wimpy guys. Inspiring Command is the feat that you need to give your team aggression and field control. But yeah, I'm feeling you on saying about putting just good feats on good figures, and not putting like good feats on okay figures to make them good figures. There was one thing that I proposed on the WizKids forum back in the day, and this is before we had character cards, was that they have like trading card packs with feats, and then they would say like, this feat is for designated Captain America, it costs this much, and then if you put it on anybody else it costs 10 points more. Or you get an extra bonus if you put this on Thor, or your team gets this if you put it on Superman or Shazam, or what's the other guy I'm trying to think of, Mr. Terrific. Things like that I thought would have been a better way of dealing with feats, instead of just making them like blank. It's like, do you have this power?
And the uniqueness as well. I didn't really have too much of a problem with people playing a bunch of Protected. I can see where that's kind of annoying, but at the same time, I think you could kind of trick. Ideally, you get them to a point where you make a guy blow their Protected, and then you pound some damage on him, and then their guys are kind of sitting there with one action token, and they can swing back at you and take a push and possibly get hit and not have the chance to use Protected, or they just kind of sit there and watch you.
Yeah, and I know where it got frustrated for me for Protected was when I started dealing with Skrull Miss Marvel with Protected. That one ticked me off, because you finally get that hit in, and you got past Skrulls, you got past Shape Change, and then it's like, I'm going to take Protected, and it's like, and you're not taking pushing damage, and you shake your fist at the sky and not at your opponent because that gets you DQ'd. But you shake your fist at the sky and just wish like, why couldn't? But
yeah, that's Miss Culver was a figure that I have quite a lot of disdain for, and I really wonder how collateral damage Superman that has a Batman team ally who has exactly one click of hypersonic speed and costs 211 points, and you look at him and you look at Miss Scoville, who has 4 clicks of hypersonic speed plus stealth, and then she gets indomitable and she gets outwit on top of that, and it's just like, wow, we got a power jolt very, very suddenly.
yeah, and I think this is something that we've sort of talked about in the past. I don't, on various forums, is that there's a point formula, but I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. And I don't think that there is a solid point formula when it comes to special powers. I think that they sort of like say, yeah, this is normally costed this much, minus this many points, or put this, because this combo is really strong, add this many points, and then we'll play with the stats like this, and then bam, here's our figure. We play test it, we feel it's a little too expensive, we shave it down some more. That's how I think they do special powers, because like when I look at Novar, I'm like, you have way too much, and I say that very seriously. Like, you have way too much for how much you cost. You should cost more. Am I mad that he costs as much as he costs? No, because he's still viable in the meta. If he costs more, no one would play him, and I think that's sort of the problem once you start tacking on multiple powers. Is that it gets to the point where no one plays them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I do play test actually my own styles from time to time, and the thing that strikes me is usually if I have a figure that is too powerful, it sticks out pretty quick. Like about two or three games, and I'll just be like, wow, that guy is out of control. And a good litmus test is to take a look at other figures that are in his point range, and if that do the same thing. If they're an attacker, if they're a tie-up piece, if they're a support piece, kind of gauge him against the other figures and what benefits or negatives that he has in relation to them. And that's one that I didn't see with very many downfalls at all. And that's the interesting points on the point is that one thing you've heard is that if you have multiple special powers on the same spot, that they might cost the cheapest one, or they might only cost one of them. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting that a guy brought up was that it might be the difference between the attack and the defense values of the set, not the specific numbers themselves. Like theoretically, if they had the starships, the new Star Trek, if they made their attack like 50 and they made their defense like 57, that 7-point difference might be the same as a 10 attack versus 17. And that might be the difference they're looking at, not the specific numbers.
I guess your dog wants to say hi to the show.
What do you say?
I guess your dog wants to say hi to the show.
Yeah, he's a Yorkie. He likes to bark a lot.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. And so and you bring up something interesting with the Star Trek clicks, because the Star Trek clicks, when I've sort of looked at them, I said to myself, I'm like, I'm not playing these. There's no reason for me to play these. And then I came back. I was like, these aren't bad. It's not completely bad. And when I start looking at them from, within themselves, it looks fun, just like how the Street Fighter clicks look fun. It's like, oh, wow, you can do this, and you can put these ships together, and then they can fight this ship. And I think if you were a Star Trek fan and you weren't like a clicks fan, then I could see how you could say, like, oh, yeah, I'd definitely play. As a clicks fan, as a HeroClix fan, I really say like I can only see maybe one I could play. Other than that, like I wouldn't play. Like in the one is like the IKS Chichang, or however you say that, Chichang. Didn't come out any better the second time I said it. 8 range, hypersonic speed, enhancement, toughness, 2 damage. I mean, 75 points. I could fit that into a team. That's not a problem. But I see what you're saying with when we go back to the game design element, how it almost seems like things are balanced within a set. And this sort of again shows my age in the game. I remember a conversation that old WizKids had right before Armor Wars came out, and they tried to set up like a live chat in which they were going to preview some stuff and say, and you get to send questions to Seth, and Bromags was the sort of the filter between you and Seth, and of course everything was so like it was just bad, more in the sense of they didn't answer any serious questions. They only answered like the light questions that don't require any thought or couldn't be questioned. And one of the things that did slip through, and I think it was either Hair 10 or some other forum personality, was what goes into the design of a figure. And one thing that came out was, there is a formula, but at the end of the day, the designer gets to say how much a figure is costed. And so that's when I sort of started to realize, like, yeah, there might be a formula, but it's not held hard and fast to all the figures. I know that's for guarantee sure. And you can look at the new Adam Warlock at 450 points and just like laugh, because that's not 450 points of playability.
Right. For a month or two, pretty consecutive, I was one of those guys trying to crack the code. I was going through the old sets, looking at Thugs and Domino and Rookie, and trying to find the point value of TAs and stats, and it just it'd be about 95% pretty good. But this was once again before the special powers, before traits, before stuff like that. And then there's just every time there's just something a little bit off where they wouldn't all fit up. You could maybe get 8 out of 10 or so, close enough within 3 to 5 points, and there would just be a few that would just throw you for a loop, and you're just like, it works for most of them, but not all of them,
Yeah, and I think that's when that designer preference kicks in. Like, yeah, we're going to make them that much. We think they're worth that much. And unfortunately, like with playtesting, when I lived in Tulsa, I used to know someone that was on Old WizKids playtesting group, and he gave me some insight on how Old WizKids did playtesting. Nika is all in-house, and it does stop the spoilers, of how did Boneyard know so many times of what was coming out. And, you keep a lot of things under wraps that way by making sure that, the play testing isn't public or outside of the company. But I really do have to say, like, man, they need to get some more people to play test to give them a second opinion, because I don't think all the dials are cranked out the way they should be. And I know, and I'm going to say this, and I know some of my listeners are going to groan, because I've said this multiple times. When I look at Hulk versus Superman, and I look at the dials and the point cost, I don't see how we end up with Hulk for the figures being as expensive as they are, as if we look at the point cost of the figures in Superman. Now, if the figures in Superman are undercosted, then we have to admit they're undercosted. But if the figures in Superman are normalized, then there's just poor dial design when it comes to Hulk set. That's just my opinion. And there are some exceptions, and one of the exceptions for me is Hulk Mariner. Another exception, which people will continue to sleep on, is Black Tarantula. just you have support plus for a couple of clicks, running shot, decent range, and you can take a lot of damage. Plus, you have regen for 88 points. But that's something altogether different. Okay, going on to that secret question as we sort of wrap things up. You have to go play a game of HeroClix for your life, or the life of a loved one, and you have to win this game. It is a 1,000-point game. You have one advantage. You get to pick which one set you can build all of your figures out of, and you get to pick the one set your opponent gets to build all of their figures out of. What set do you pick, and what set do you give your opponent?
I would take Crisis, and I would give probably Infinity Challenge or Batman Alpha. I'll have Darkseid rolling with the Chief, and this chase Superman, and we'll just bring the hurt.
So you just make sure, like, you can't crack my impervious ever.
Exactly. Yeah, Chief is back there manipulating people. I'm rolling dice so they don't take push damage, and it gets ugly real fast.
Wow. Okay. That part was unexpected. That was really unexpected, and you have taught me something about the element of surprise. Thanks, Neo Shazam, for coming on the show, and to everyone that's listening. Look forward to future shows, and I will have more people on. And just real briefly, I'm going to give a shout out to a particular individual who decided to actually PM me as I said, and that person is Purple Surfer. What's up to you, homeboy? And Purple Surfer said, one thing he wanted me to talk on is about figures and team abilities, in team setups that are a little bit out of the box. And the more specifically, in quote, says, I like hearing about out of the box team ideas, underrated figs, and underused strategies the most. If that is something you can talk on, I'd love to hear your ideas. Well, sir, guess what? I made a couple of teams for you, just so that you can have some real goodness. First off, I have a hand team. 300 points, the Incredible Hulk Black Tarantula, Gorgon from Captain America, GSX Psylocke, Hammer of Thor Hand Ninja, Scorpio Key, and Jewel Kryptonite. Your goal is to try to TK over Black Tarantula to the Black Tarantula over to the Scorpio Key, and you try to pull your Jewel Kryptonite in an interesting position, so that once you get midfield and things start engaging, you can put Psylocke up there and she can start mind controlling. Another team that I have thrown around is Watch Me Blow Up Your World. It is a 300-point team involving Claw, the 127-point version, Mandroid Armor, Domino from GSX at 69 points, Question, 37 points, Rookie Con Artist, and 2 Paramedics, and a Scorpio Key, and you sort of notice how good the Scorpio Key is. How this works is that you TK out Claw once their team deploys enough to have him single target pulse wave whatever your big threat is. And if you're dealing with somebody that's running Darkseid and a bunch of nurses, you're really going to love Claw. Definitely an unrestricted game, or a Silver Age game, as some people like to play them. And the beautiful thing about Claw with the Masters of Evil is that he can running shot pulse wave and do that again, and then take his push, and then if he wants to pulse wave one more time, he can, or he can keep running back until he gets back to the medics, heal him back up with the medics, perplex up whoever else you need to, and when you're done with Mandroid Armor, you can place him next to either Domino to enhance her range or increase her damage, or place him next to Claw so that Claw can do some more interesting ranged attacks or increased damage attacks. And the last one, and I'm going to go sort of way back. I'm going to sort of like flip my HeroClix notebook, and I'm going to go way, way back to something that I made just for fun. And some people might be like, oh gosh, he does things just for fun. I'm like, yes, I do things just for fun, and trying to do something a little bit different, not trying to go fully into the meta. And here's one of my teams. It's my 300-point animal team that I was thinking about taking to Gen Con if I was able to go. Animal Man, 79 points. Detective Chimp, 62 points. He has Outwit and Stealth. Howard the Duck, 35 points with Perplex. Rocket Raccoon, 65 points with Prob. And Puma with 56 points. There we go. Hopefully you enjoy the teams, Purple Surfer. And for anybody else, just feel free to PM me at Dark Logos at HC Realms. And Neo Shazam, you have anything you want to say as we end things out?
Have a shout out to HeroClix up in Orlando. He's the fantastic tournament director up there, and he makes custom feats and helps me, gives me some grids for my custom maps as well. And then the last little bit of did you know trivia is I used to play Star Wars CCG competitively and went to Worlds one year, and I was actually interviewed by a HeroClix connection, the infamous Mark Tuttle, which was a fun little thing as we're talking about Infinity Gauntlet and Mark Tuttle. And so, yeah, he was the guy who interviewed me during Worlds, and ironically enough, during that time period, they kind of poorly play tested a set, and the meta was dominated by a poorly designed concept for that Worlds.
Tuttle strikes again. And
Tuttle strikes again.
Tuttle strikes again. All right. This is the Starting Over podcast. We're glad for your tunership, or however you put it in proper English. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, a.k.a. Dark Logos. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.